We are below the art gallery in the Benedicta Art Center, where the BookArts studio is located behind me. My name is Rachel Mellis, and I'm on the art faculty. I've been here for about 5 years, and I teach foundations classes and a course called Art of the Printed Book in this Welly BookArts studio, which you see behind me. I actually have a lot of fond associations with this part of the BAC because when I was about 5 years old, my parents lived in St. Joseph, and they would come visit their former professors here at St. Ben's and St. John's. They were students in the English department, and they also took many classes in the art department. So they would bring me and my brothers when we were really small, and they would set us up with a little picnic blanket under the stairs, and we would read some books and eat some snacks while they visited with their favorite professors, the faculty, the sisters, the brothers that they had become close to. And now I get to teach here, and I get to teach artist books, my favorite subject, which is all about those kind of relationships, collaboration, working with people you care about, and working with the ways that we view and the ways that we read and the ways that we hold and touch books. And that is all taking place right here in this book studio. So now we are standing next to the shelf of broadsides made here at the BookArts studio for the Literary Arts Institute. And there are many of them from over the last 20 years. A lot of the most recent ones I've had a hand in, so I'll probably feature those. What I'd like to do is show you a few and explain a little bit about what a broadside is. A broadside used to mean anything generically printed on one sheet of paper, something ephemeral, one side of the paper, wasn't going to last very long. But more and more it's become something that actually means a treasured, kept for a long time, fine press printed work of poetry or literature. And what we do here is we either entirely in-house or in collaboration with a variety of artists and printers, illustrators, we create broadsides for our visiting writers. And I'll show you a couple examples. Actually, the most recent one was for the visiting writer Sarah Vowell, who was on campus just a few weeks ago. And my colleague Scott Murphy in the art department and my friend Mary Bruno, who has a long connection with this place as well. Her father actually taught in this studio and was a key person for forming a lot of what we have in the studio. The three of us worked together to make this broadside, and the light in here may or may not allow you to see this, but what you can sort of pick up on when you actually touch this is that there's a texture to the paper, that the letterpress has indented into the paper and made it clear that it's a fine press print. You might even be able to sort of see that on the back. So one thing that's really important in broadsides today is that the text, the image, and the paper all work together to make one cohesive whole that really promotes the work of the writer, again, the studio and the literary arts here at St. Ben's and St. John's. And what I'd like to show you too is some variety in the kinds of imagery. This is another one that I worked on where you can see that there's a lot more of an image. There's wood grain, there's linoleum cut, and the paper is more transparent. So I'm trying to make sure that you can catch it all. And we actually make our own paper here too for some of these broadsides, which I'll be showing you that paper making in a little bit. Another one that I had a hand in with my colleague Scott Murphy was one by piece by Louise Erdrich, who visited here. And we did a photopolymer illustration, and I'll be showing you what photopolymer is. And this is one that Sarah Langworthy, who actually now used to work in Minnesota, now works in Iowa, produced for the Literary Arts Institute a few years ago, that shows you sort of the variation in what one can do with the broadside art form. This one has a lot of ink washes, layers of ink color, and this was in celebration actually of Merce Cunningham and his dance performance that we had here a couple of years ago. Another thing we sometimes make here is posters. This is a poster that was made as part of a workshop with a visiting printer named Amos Paul Kennedy Jr. And he came here and worked with our students just for one afternoon, and they produced many copies of this poster, and that was actually in relation to a theater event that was going on at that time. So we were tying together what was happening in theater and what was happening here in the book studio. A poster as it sounds, is usually a little bit more about promotion, advertisement, or a quick slogan, whereas a broadside is usually a little more literary, takes a little longer to fully look at it. And then another thing that we make here too is greeting cards. This is a card made by a St. Ben's English major, Anna Boyer, who graduated a few years ago and stuck around for a little bit after graduation and made some work for us here in the BookArts studio, including a really impressive book as well. But she made many of these small pieces, cards, and she's now in graduate school for BookArts, which I'm really proud of because she took my class at the end of her time here and then really thought that she wanted to keep bringing literature and art and book together. So that's what she's doing now. It just needs something else in here. Like try putting a lead in there and then clamp against that. See if that works. So the primary activity that happens in the BookArts studio, besides broadsides, posters, greeting cards, various ephemera, is of course making artist books. And behind me, my students are working on their final project. They are making miniature books, which I'll show you a few examples of. And they're in the various stages of binding and sewing and cutting, and a little bit will show you that they're setting type and they're printing as well. In front of me, I have examples of books that I've made as well as books that the students have made. I work in this studio too for my own personal creative work. I'm in the middle of a really large book project right now that I have printed all the pages for and have not yet bound. I mostly do printed books, but sometimes I also do sculptural books. And this is one that is supposed to, in its movement, how it opens and closes, and in its color, and how all those things go together, symbolize the way that a fruit or a seed pod might open and close and function. So first of all, the fact that it's very fluid, that it's made out of organic handmade paper, and that the colors are both on the outside, sort of like skin or tassels, and then also on the inside like seeds. All to me symbolizes what a fruit does in nature. The other thing that I like to do, and that is part of why I got into book arts, is illustration or printmaking for its own sake. This is actually a collaborative book that I worked on with some other students in a workshop that I took. And we made wood engravings. And you can sort of see a sense of all of them here. They're upside down. They were all supposed to be inspired by lines of poetry. And this is the one that I made for that collaboration. Because so much of my practice is collaborative, and I think collaboration is really important for artists today to learn and understand, especially in the book arts where you might be working with a writer, an editor, an artist, a binder. Those people might be all one and the same, or they might be different. I encourage my students to collaborate with a collaborative book in the middle of their semester. So this is one of the 2 collaborative books that they made this semester. This is the center fold image and text. And I'll show you the title page. And these are students from all years and all majors here at St. Ben's and St. John's. But the primary students taking these classes tend to be English majors and art majors, and then again, a variety of people from all kinds of backgrounds. The other thing that we offer here that students who get really interested in this kind of printing and binding and illustrating is we offer a book arts minor. And that means that our students who are not majoring in art can choose to minor in the book arts and take this class, Art of the Printed Book, in which they make this, a course on book art history, a course on design, an internship with a local artist or paper maker, and then a few other courses of their choosing, particularly paper making or handmade photography, or an artist book class we have that focuses very much on this relationship between binding and content and the text and the artwork inside. And I've been meaning to mention that, I think that's what really makes an artist book, is that combination, that you can read something, you can view something, and most importantly, you can hold something or move something, and that they all really go together and speak to what's happening in the book. So I'll show you a couple examples of past student work. These are some of the miniature books that students have made for this class. And this is one that a student here wrote, and I'm glancing her way right now to see if she knows that I'm bragging about her yet again. She's now a graduating senior named Nikki Werner. And this is a piece where she wrote a poem and then used wood type and metal type and book binding to put this all together so that the poem, which is very much about the feeling of being back home on the farm or longing to be back home on the farm, to me makes me think of the wind, the grass, and the movement perhaps of fences and skylines. So I'm about to show you a couple examples of miniature books from past years of this class, and it so happens that one of the students who took this class, was it 2 years ago?
Last spring.
Last spring, wow. So Nikki Werner, who's standing next to me, is graduating this spring, and only last spring she took this class. And this was your first class in letterpress printing, book arts?
Yep.
And you're a writer as well?
Yep.
So you had taken creative writing classes before this?
Yep. And I actually wrote this poem that the book is about. I wrote it in one of my creative writing classes.
Before you then printed it?
Yep.
Would you do us the honor of unfolding
Yes.
it? Okay. We actually just nabbed Nikki because she was happening to be printing right now in this classroom. And she's unfolding this beautiful book that she wrote. And then what made you choose to design it in this way?
Well, I wanted to have the pieces. I really like the accordion fold, and I wanted the pieces to be able to flow. The poem talks about a wind chime, and so I wanted some movement to be in the book incorporated, and I chose to, I'll show you the back too, I chose to use twine to tie up the seams, just kind of to tie into, this poem is about the farm that I grew up on and longing for home.
So I show this one often because it's a really great example of tying together the poem, the meaning, it's well written, with then making that meaning even more apparent, even stronger with how you bound the book and cut up pages. So that's why I like to show it so much. Thank you for showing it
thanks.
off. And you can leave it out, actually. I'll let
Okay.
you backdrop for the others.
All right.
Thanks.
Who else wants to go in the camera?
They'll get their chance. They'll come in.
All right.
I'll just show one or two other examples. A couple other miniature books that I especially am fond of. This one was made inspired by the maple syrup making that happens at St. John's. So it uses a maple syrup tap. You pull it out, and then it has real wood on the front, and then inside it shows you the layers of the bark of the tree. So you're learning something about what those layers are called by actually moving through the layers. And this one was done by a student whose grandfather had done a lot of moving and a lot of writing. And so she made her own design for a package that looks like it's a moving box. And then on the inside, it looks like the inside of the moving box with tissue and paper forming the text and the illustrations for her book. And this is another great one, also done by an English major here, Katie Bohm. And this is her own creative writing about emotion and burning and passion. And you can see that she hand cut each page with different shapes and colors to, again, enhance the meaning of her writing that's inside of this. Now we're standing in the papermaking area, which was also begun by the Literary Arts Institute. And we have a student who's taken a handmade papermaking class here. We started teaching those classes just a couple years ago. So Margaret Raisler is only, I think you were in the second class that had ever been offered.
Yeah, it's the first 4 credit. It was the first time it had been offered as a 4 credit class before it was a 1 credit class.
And you took it with my colleague Scott Murphy? And what did you make in that class?
We made a couple different batches of paper. We started out with a cotton rag, which is basically using the old recycled clothing that was made out of cotton to make a batch of paper. And then we moved on to plant fibers from the Arboretum. Each group took a different plant from the Arboretum, cooked it down, beat it up, and made that into paper. And then we did a commercial products batch of paper using commercial products that are made for paper making, like abaca and flax and all that half stuff that's been already processed a little bit. And then we had a final project where we chose whatever we wanted to make and then made that into sort of more of a finished artistic work, did something with the paper once we were finished.
And before we go into what Margaret's making now, I'm holding actually another, an example of an Arboretum made paper. And this is actually paper that was made by Ellery Egermont, who worked here a couple years ago. And she came up with, she did an undergraduate research project with myself and Scott Murphy and with help from the biology department to make a paper out of big blue stem, right? Reed canary grass and flax. And those three things are all really important to the history of St. Ben's. So we called it a St. Ben's signature paper because the flax actually represents flax that was grown by the Sisters of St. Benedict when they used to make their own clothing, their own habits. And then the big blue stem is a native plant from the prairie, and reed canary grass is an invasive plant that's kind of taking over prairie areas. So we combine the three for a symbolic story about St. Ben's. And I can show this to you closer later as well, but this is a broadside of Seamus Heaney's poetry that Scott and I printed on this paper that Ellery had made. So Margaret is carrying on, making more paper. So she's actually doing this she's been making paper, it seems almost like for fun, all semester,
it's so
right?
fun. Yeah.
That's great. So tell us what you're making now. This is toward your BookArts project right now.
This is for my miniature book. I wanted to, I'm printing graffiti found in bathrooms, and so as the book goes on, the reader becomes more and more aware that this is bathroom graffiti, because I'm sort of presenting it as these profound thoughts without telling them where I found them. And so,
you're an English major, right?
I am an English major.
Do you write too, typically?
I do, but I don't know. I wrote the intro to this book, and I felt like that was enough, because I've been looking at these things, the bathroom graffiti, and thinking, well, that's so funny, that's so great. Like, people, just feel the need to write something crazy on a bathroom wall. So, I felt like my writing in the intro was enough.
Well, you're contextualizing it well.
Yeah. And so I want the paper to start getting more character as the book goes on, as the quotes start to get more character. So I reconstituted some pulp. You end up with like leftover pulp every time you make a batch of paper that's sort of strained out of the vat. And so we leave these balls to dry and then save them in the cabinet over there. So there's a bunch of them, so you could actually just re-put them in a blender and like reconstitute the pulp. And so I'm going to do like pulp painting, sort of. I started out with a pure white cotton pulp, and I've been pulling sheets from that to sort of get regular, normal cotton paper. And I'm going to start adding different colors into the pulp to sort of give it this weird look, to sort of give it a mixed feel, and just sort of start making character type paper, I guess.
Can we pick up some of the pulp?
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty good. Yeah. So just get a sense of the texture.
Yep.
This is, you can see why it's so much fun.
I feel like the way I describe it to some people is, this is what I think clouds would feel like. But yeah, it's soft and interesting feeling, and it sticks to your arms and gets everywhere, all over your clothes. Everything in paper making is wet, but it's still fun.
Cool. And then you're going to pull a sheet of paper now? Or you're doing that right now. I think we'll try to be able to see that. Okay. Are you doing any of the color right now, or it's white?
I think I'm going to start with color, because I'm into my second bucket of white, and I want there to be white in there so the ink can still show up. So.
Okay, so you get ready for that.
Okay. Let's see. What do you want to do first?
Do you need to? Okay.
Right. So I'll be back to review otherwise. Oh, I'm making this up as I go. This is experimenting. Oh, this is going to look like Christmas.
So you're pouring some of the green and some of the red in, some purple.
Yeah. Just so it doesn't look like Christmas.
There you go.
And then just mix it with the white.
And so the process that Margaret's doing here, just so you're aware, this is a process of making paper that was invented about 2,000 years ago in China. And it's still the way we do it today, although the fibers that were used in China were a different kind of fiber. So in China they used mulberry. Did you take the workshop we had?
I did, the Eastern paper making workshop.
We had a non-Western paper making with mulberry fibers workshop here. And now you're using cotton, right?
Yes, just cotton and then reconstituted probably cotton rag stuff. So.
It was really different because we had to beat the fibers with mallets, whereas the cotton gets beaten in a room over here.
It's a lot more labor intensive. My arms felt really strong afterwards. And then the way that you pull the sheet, the movement's different, and I got a lot more water on me,
and the paper's much thinner.
Yeah, and you have to do multiple like layers of paper, and it was really interesting. I don't know if I like it better or less, or it's just different.
Yep.
It was fun though.
So the cotton paper that you're making now, anything that you see today that's printed on tree-less or tree-free paper, or it says 100% cotton, I mean, cotton is not a tree, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the most common sort of printmaking or high-quality book paper is cotton or flax, which is made, it's the same fiber that makes linen clothes that I mentioned earlier. What else am I forgetting? Those are the main ones for commercial papers. You've used Abaca, right?
Yeah. And I just found it interesting coming into the class that, because I grew up in a commercial paper making town, like there were paper mills where I grew up, at least 3.
Which town?
Wisconsin Rapids, like Nakusa area, central Wisconsin, super large paper making area right on the Wisconsin River. And so when I came into this class, I found it super interesting that we did not use any tree fiber at all. No bast fiber or anything like that. I was expecting it, but it was interesting to learn that handmade paper is so much different. I was like expecting to have to go out and scrape a tree. No.
Which is great to hear too, because that's a big part of what we're trying to do with these classes is have you just, if you really know the materials and you know the old way they were made or the archival way they're made, then you can start to experiment and you can say, what's another way to do this? Think of it in a totally different way. So that's what you're doing right now.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun.
So do you want to go ahead and pull up the sheet? She's going to use a mold and a decal. The decal is this piece that fits over the screen, which is called the mold. And this is the way that paper, again, has been made for a couple thousand years, though the molds and decals are slightly different depending where and when, what kind of product you're trying to make. So, you ready? Can I hold this up?
Oh yeah.
So she's letting this drain, and I'm going to let it drip a little bit over here. I don't know how well you can see, but the pulp has all just settled on top of the screen. The water's draining out into her buckets. And basically paper is formed when you've beaten these fibers enough that they rebond at the molecular level with the help of the water. And that's why paper is actually very strong.
Yeah, you can probably see it a little bit closer like that. This is a pretty thin sheet, sort of.
You can't tell, right? You can't tell that it's so thin right now because it looks thick, but it'll press thin.
Yeah, this thing will squish all the water out of it. Oh, well, this will go. It hasn't been going too well all day, but yeah, best sheet of the day.
Good job.
Yeah. When I make the paper with reconstituted pulp, I call it garbage paper because you never know what's going to show up in there, all these weird little inclusions and things like that. So, I don't know. I like it a lot because it's very surprising. And sometimes your favorite sheet doesn't like go on there right or doesn't cooch right, so it gets messed up. But then there's this other sheet that completely surprises you when it's dry because the color lightens often when it's dry, so I'm thinking, oh, this is really dark, but it'll probably turn out exactly how I want it. So
I think you're going to keep making paper for a long time.
Yes.
If you could do a perfect sheet while being filmed for the first time making it, you're meant to be a paper maker.
Yes.
Do you think you are going to do an internship, like in Minneapolis? Or?
Yeah, my aunt actually, I actually discovered last week that my great-grandfather was a letterpress printer.
Nice.
And so my aunt knows some people in the family who have a studio, and so she's thinking that she could help me get an internship, which would be really fun. So, and that'll do the internship for the BookArts minor, which is what I'm going for.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And you're a first year or a sophomore?
A sophomore.
Sophomore, so you got plenty of time to do that. That's
yes, I'm very excited.
Nice.
Yeah, this class is Scott started talking about the book arts minor in this class, and my best friend was in this class with me, and we were doing it, you know, for fun. And she turned and looked at me, and I turned and looked at her right when he started talking about it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, that's my minor. Because I'm really interested in like editing and publishing and the whole book design process. So it was like, it was made for me. So super perfect.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else we should show of this?
I don't know.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks. I hope you got everything you needed and that I wasn't super awkward in
You
here.
were awesome. I am in the typesetting area with Kristen Lundberg, also an English major, who is also working on one of her miniature books. Kristen, what are you doing right now?
I'm in the process of setting 2 poems, one by Elizabeth Barrett Browning and one by her husband, Robert Browning. So in order to do this, we use movable face type, which means that every single letter is individual. So I have to set each and every letter of this poem, which has taken a very, very long time.
Do you enjoy doing that?
I do, actually. You know, it's kind of tedious.
Are you not just saying that because I taught you how to do it?
Yeah. It's a little tedious at first, but really the end product is what's really awesome is you get it all done, you print it, and then it just looks beautiful. It really does. There's something about the way it looks. So, yeah, I've just been kind of...
So you're working with what size type? What font size?
I chose 8-point font, which
is very small.
Which is very small and a little difficult to work with, but I really wanted to fit the entire line onto one of the poem onto one line. I didn't want to have to indent it or anything like that because I feel like it might ruin the integrity of the poem. You know, I don't know what Elizabeth Barrett Browning is thinking or what Robert Browning is thinking, why they had each line the way they do, but I'm not going to mess with that.
Right.
So I chose a very small type.
And so when you set the type, if you want to go ahead and just keep doing it,
Yes.
it's very hard to set type and talk. So I'll talk about it for a minute and then have Kristen.
I ran out of ease, so.
So that was actually going to be one of my questions. One of the challenges of setting little pieces of type one piece at a time is that you have to have enough of each of the letters. And then also, what are the hardest letters to tell apart?
Oh, B's and D's and N's and U's and P's and Q's.
All these letters are actually backwards in their metal or wood form. We also have wood type behind us, and I can pull some of that out in a little bit. But they all have to be backwards so that they'll print on the page the right side. So when you're setting type, you have to tell yourself that the letters are left to right, and upside down. And basically backwards.
Backwards,
right.
yeah. So
there's a lot to remember. And then each letter has its own space in what we call the case. And basically we call, or the terminology of uppercase and lowercase comes from type being set in this way.
Yeah.
What else do you like about this process? Does it make you slow down?
It does.
Yeah.
It really makes you read the poem too from a geeky poetry reader's point of view. I've really gotten to know this particular poem really well just because you like set it, you reread it, you print it, you read it, you're reading it constantly, and it really makes you.
And you have to take it apart at the end, letter by letter too, so I find I'm reading it again when I do that.
Yeah. It's kind of a tangible link with the poem. So.
And this way of printing, of course, is the only way that we had to mass produce or print multiple copies of books between the middle of the 15th century when in the Western world Gutenberg invented this process. A little bit before him in Korea, something similar to this had also been invented. And by this they mean what Kristen said before, movable type that's individual little pieces, so you can interchange it for whatever book you're making or print you're making. Before that, you could only just carve one big block, which would take even longer. Or, of course, do hand illumination, which is beautiful, but can't be repeated as much. So this process involved making the movable type. It involved making presses that could print the movable type, casting equipment that you could cast the molten metal in, and that was all, invented in 1440s, 1450s, and stayed that way until the mid-20th century, until the 1950s, 1960s. And at that time, offset lithography really sort of fully took its place. It had been gradually taking its place. And then since the 60s and 70s onward, the computer age really started taking over, and now we can do on-demand printing.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, I guess is part of the appeal of doing this for you also that it is so historical?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm a history minor as well, so it's been really interesting getting to learn a little bit more about the background of the type. I'll be taking Teresa Vann's Books to Bytes class next semester, which kind of goes along with this in the history of the book and the history of movable types.
So you're almost a book arts minor too.
I know.
There you go. That's one of the classes.
So it's been great.
And you've also been part of, you're one of the guides for the St. John's Bible project as well.
Yep, I've worked with the St. John's Bible. I know like the calligraphy side of things, and now I'm kind of working my way through the history of the book through classes and jobs and things like that, which is a lot of fun.
Nice. Great. What do you see yourself doing after?
Well, my goal is to kind of move into library science, hopefully within book preservation. That's kind of what I'm aiming towards. I love what Dr. Heinzelman does at the Himmel and everything like that, so getting to work with rare books.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of what else we should mention about the type. We haven't mentioned the leading and spacing material.
Yeah. Once you get to the end of your word, or the end of the last word in the line, a lot of times you'll have like extra space, which I of course do since I chose a longer line, since some of my lines of my poem are a lot longer than the beginning lines. So I'll just fill in with more leading, which is just like big block spaces.
So when you type on the computer now, do you feel like, oh, all I have to do is hit a button and nothing happens?
Yeah.
But you know, another thing I think is often a benefit of this is it makes you more conscious of the decisions you make in digital graphic design too.
Absolutely.
Because you know that this all started, you had to do it in a certain way. Everything had to be in rows, and it had to be sort of similar column widths, and so that helps us understand why choices were and are.
Yeah, and what they do and do.
Yeah. Nice.
I have a great appreciation for people who set books before we got computers. When I see books now that were printed, you know, in like the 1800s, I'm like, how did people do this? Like set all of that by hand.
Well, and I don't know how much your other classes have talked about this, but the idea now is that, you know, a lot of people say books are being replaced with the screen. And so people talk about the death of the book, but in the book studio we often talk about that the book won't die, it will be replaced by, there'll be digital versions and they'll be really well made. This is our dream anyway,
Our dream, yeah.
Your and I's in this class's dream is that there'll be really well made books. Books that, you know, have to sort of be expressed in a physical form will be, and that we don't even know yet what forms those are going to be. And that by learning the old and the new ways, you can be on the cutting edge of maybe what that new library science or book science or publishing might be.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So that's my hope for you.
Yeah, that's my hope for me too.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we're talking about the digital. I also want to point out you learned a digital printing technology in this class too. Photopolymer printmaking. Yep. And so you set type on the computer, and then we turned it into a printer plate.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go over here and show that now.
Perfect.
So over here we have the components that go into photopolymer plate making, and this is the machine that makes it possible. It's very plain looking on the outside. It's actually very well calibrated, expensive, high quality piece of equipment that not a lot of big studios actually have right now. Most places you have to ship away to get your photopolymer plates made. And to make those photopolymer plates, you basically set up your type or your image on a computer, and you get a digital photo bureau to make film for you. So we send away to have that done in Minneapolis. And then that film is placed over a piece of plastic, and the light hits that piece of plastic through the film, and wherever the light is allowed to hit, it hardens that plastic. That plastic is a light-sensitive material, and it makes this ridgy, hard material that can have images on it. This is imagery, or it can have text on it. So it's sometimes appealing to do this because it's faster, But most of the time when we do it, it's because we want to do things like have a drawing mixed in with the type, where it's easier to mix that imagery and that type together. And this is actually a broadside that is made entirely with photopolymer. It has type here, 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 2 different colors, and then images. So these are actually some of the images are on this plate, some are on this plate, and it was all printed with this photopolymer on handmade paper. So the end result still gives you the texture of a letterpress print, which you probably can't see on the camera, but you can really feel. If I didn't have my gloves on, I could feel it better. This is really, it's nice because this poem in some ways is about land and topography. It has the word atlas in it, and this paper has its own topography. I've heard other printers refer to this idea of the ridges of the page being like a map or like a landscape. So the photopolymer allows us to still get that feeling, and it also allows us to have the students understand how seamless the digital and the physical can be. They don't have to just do the old-fashioned physical work or just the contemporary entirely digital, but you can bring them together to make one piece, one broadside, or one book that itself is telling a bigger story than just its writing or just its imagery or just its paper could do on its own. So I'm here with Kit Chambers, who is printing the pages for her miniature book, and she has a really complicated structure for her book. I'm going to let her show it to you.
So this is kind of the structure I'm doing for my book. It's kind of an accordion fold with all the pages being 1 inch by 3 inches, which is kind of the parameters. And then so on the inside, I'm actually going to be printing on the binding, which is set for like, I just set my type in a really complicated way because it was all a bunch of different layers and I had to set it all at the same time, and I'm using such a thin sheet of paper, so I just had to figure that out. And I actually have to tape my paper to the tympan so it doesn't like flap and I get lines and stuff. So just run this through. Oh, it was in trip. There you go. So ta-da!
So you can hear from the sound, perhaps, just what an impact that type makes on the paper. And you're going for a lot of punch or a lot of impact?
Yes, I am.
And that's so that the texture will really show on
and
both
even
sides.
on the back side too, even so when you look at it, there's like kind of an imprint of words on the back side of it.
How long do you think it took you to set up the type to get ready to print?
Like 4 times as long as it's going to take me to actually print it, because I'm only doing like 5 pages or so. So it took a while, and it took a while to figure out measuring exactly where it's going to hit, and then I actually had to like move it up and take a bunch of the furniture out and switch it around.
By furniture, she means these wooden and metal pieces that surround the type. They're what hold the type in place so that it won't slide around. Because remember, every piece is a little individual piece. So, yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's right, you have to tape.
I tape it every time.
So
normally people don't have to do that. Normally it's a lot faster.
This is one disadvantage of a small book.
Yeah.
Small books in some ways are actually harder to do than large ones. Did I tell you that?
No, you didn't. I printed on the tape a bit too. So. Mistakes happen.
What's your favorite thing about printing?
My favorite thing is the actual printing part. Like once you get into a rhythm and you can print, like I printed all of those like yesterday, so just like getting in a rhythm, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just printed 100 covers, and you know, I'm all done with it. It feels good, you know?
Yeah, because again, the setting up is the time-consuming part. And once you've done that, you can print a whole bunch of ones.
Yeah, and it goes by really fast, and you just get in a rhythm and like cranking it, and you're kind of fast going, which is nice.
Kind of a dance.
Yeah.
Well, it's very hard to do this while talking to someone.
Yeah.
Not to mention even being
And having the tape too.
Yeah.
Sticking in my gloves, because you normally don't have to tape it, but.
Well, you're doing well.
Thanks. Small enough it should be. Yay.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I haven't even started printing yet.
How much you want to cover?
So I'm here with Amanda Brown, and we are in the bookbinding area, and you're binding your mini book. You're almost done.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book and what you're doing?
Sure. It's about doing CPR. It's a poem that I wrote this year and last year. I've been working on it. It's just very simple. There's one stanza per page. Right now I'm working on binding. Because it's about CPR, I am putting gauze on the paper so that it has a connection to first aid.
Yeah. And then when it's done, you're putting it inside the first aid box.
Yes, which I have several. Here. Just have my little
with the rest of the stuff too.
Yep.
Nice.
All fit in there.
Cool. So you have glue out, you've got gauze out,
Yep.
you've got cardboard. You already did sewing.
Yep.
And it's a pamphlet stitch, it looks like.
Yep.
So that's a nice stitch for what's called a single signature book. So everything folds into itself in one step, and this is really well done, really well cut, really well crafted. So, sigh of relief. You've put a lot of work into this so far.
Yeah.
And are you making extra copies?
Yes, I'm making a total of 6.
6 copies.
Three of them are gifts.
Uh-huh.
One was for my roommate whose birthday was yesterday, so I want to get one done today.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. And you've called yourself do you have a press name?
It's Armor Press.
Armor Press. So she's even actually also has a logo for her press. So, and you're using book cloth as well as paper.
Yep.
And the box, you're kind of doing a little bit of everything one can do for
Yeah.
binding and structure. And having that box sort of helps tie this all together in terms of really getting the metaphor across that's in your book, because it's both about CPR but also a bigger metaphor at the same time.
Yep.
Very well done. And you're an English major too, right?
Yes, and BookArts is my minor.
It is! Yes. All right. Well, that's a great way to end. Thank you. So, I think I just realized this is hilarious. There's typesetting going on here, and the type is being set by looking at, is this your iPod? Your
My iPhone.
iPhone. Looking at his iPhone to see how to set the lead type. That's just wonderful. So my hope for the future for this studio is that this kind of integration of old and new and this kind of activity, so many people working at once, making new things in all different areas of the studio will just keep growing and growing. And along with that, I hope that your curiosity has grown from this, and you might send me an email or stop by if you have questions, if you want to see the studio. I would welcome you, as would my students and my colleagues here. And we hope that you will just want to learn more about book arts over the years. Thank you.